Hi everyone, thanks for joining our July Unpacked Upgrade webinar. Today, Eric's going to be going into a couple of our cool new features and just go a bit more in depth. A couple housekeeping items before Eric gets started. Please feel free to post questions throughout. Eric's going to be answering them at the end of the webinar. And we will be sending a recording of the webinar to you within a week. It will also be posted on the SmartSimple YouTube channel, so just keep a lookout in your inboxes for that. And now I'm going to pass it over to Eric.
Great, thanks, Sarah, for the intro. Hey, everybody, I am Eric. I'm co-founder and director here for customer success at SmartSimple, and thanks for attending today's webinar. So today we're just going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the just 4 additional features that we released in this upgrade, and it's just maybe to touch base a little bit more on the great job that Mark did the other day, and maybe just talk a little bit more in depth on what spend more time, I guess, on the features that he wouldn't have had a chance to on the other webinar, just given that the length of it and all the amount of things that we have to cover. So without further ado, I'm going to hop into a demo and kind of do a deeper dive here. But the 4 things I'd like to touch on are the Microsoft Word Parser, password activation settings, form completion indicator, and the long style forms. So let me just end the slideshow here, and I will jump into my sessions. Perfect. So I guess I'll start with the parser first. That's probably the most, one of the biggest updates, I guess, in terms of functionality in the system that we've added. And we kind of riffed on the Excel parser that we took, and that was a big hit. So the idea is the same, being able to have a document that's outside of the system in a format that everyone's familiar with. So with Excel, being able to create a budget or fill out an outcomes form, let's say, from a locked template, and then just uploading the file and having it populate fields within the system. So we're doing the same thing here, except we're using Word. So I know Mark ran through this same process yesterday, and I think earlier on in the week. But so rather than kind of walking through the steps, I just want to talk a little bit more about how it's configured and maybe some of the use cases and things of that nature. So what we've done here and the way we've set up the demo system is really just to show you an example of how it could be used in terms of what you may want to present to your users and how you want to make use of it in the real world. So what's quite common is putting an instructions section here, providing a template with which to download the information, and then kind of obvious for where people to upload the data, and then having it populate fields like this. So I thought we could start today by actually just taking a look at the actual Word document itself. And let me just move it over here. Perfect. So when you're building out these templates, it's pretty straightforward within Word, and it may be a little bit different depending on what version of Word you're using. But essentially, what you'll want to enable is the developer tab. Okay, and then by doing so, we have access to what's called the design mode. All right, and in here you can set up any fields that you want to enter and control their properties. So if I right-click on this field here, I have a properties option, and I can specify parameters about the field. So in this case, we've given it a title, which is goal, with what you see when you're editing the field. And then you have a tag, is what we're going to be using in SmartSimple to do the mapping. And then you have other properties here, and they're just within Word. It's probably best practice to make sure the content can't be deleted. You don't want people to be moving these controls around, because that's what's going to be used to do the mapping. So how did they get here in the first place? So you can just add, once you're in design mode, you're able to actually add any of these controls here. And there's a number of different kinds of controls. The ones we have here are like a text box. So if I want to add a new one, I can go in my design mode. I can place it where I want in Word, and then I can go ahead and add my control. Once it's on the page, then you can right-click and choose Properties. I can give it a new name, and I can give it a new tag, which is what we'll use in SmartSimple to match to it. And then, we can do the same parameters as the other ones. We can lock it so it can't be changed, and then allow carriage returns in case people are putting more than one line of text. Right. So once it's here, I've added it. I can see it has a name and it has the box where you can enter the text. If I pop myself out of design mode, then it's going to operate the same as these ones. And I can click in the box, start typing text, and that's what will be entered into SmartSimple on that side. The nice thing about it is you can use different kind of controls. In this case, we could add, let's say, a dropdown or a date maybe. And I think it's that one. There we go. Probably the hard part is remembering what the little icons mean. But in this case, it would be the same idea. You insert it on the page where you want to in your Word template, select properties, and then provide a name for the field. The important thing here is that it falls into the tag box. So we're actually looking at the tag component of the control in order to do the mapping. So for things like date fields, they're going to have different properties. You can format specify the date format, for example. But again, you can lock the field so the contents can't be changed. This is true for even a drop-down field, maybe. If you want to choose here, when we go into the properties, then you can go ahead and add options like this. And you can actually even put drop-downs in your field. And as long as your drop-down in SmartSimple has those same values and matches, then it will work as well. So just make sure that if you are going to use things like drop list or something like that, that the values that you're populating into the drop list item match options that will that are on the SmartSimple side as well. Okay. And as far as tables are concerned, it's a bit more complicated, but the system's going to go through and look at the table properties, and it's going to look at that information to determine, what to call it. And in this case, we're simply have every value. You can see here when I'm in the, if I go into design mode, every value has its own options. We have description 1, 2, 3, start date 1, 2, 3, and then it can just be defined. If it's defined as a table, then it's fine. It knows how to process the information that's in a table form. So let me just minimize this and come back here, and then we can look at the how that would manifest on the SmartSimple side. So once we've made our template, then inside SmartSimple we can get into I just went into config mode and I popped into the field here, and it's really just a one-to-one match. So if you've ever used the MS Word merge, where you're taking data from SmartSimple and populating a Word document, it's actually it's the same for configuration. So the left-hand side is the SmartSimple words, and the right-hand side is what you put in the tag box in the Word document. And then you just separate, you go line by line, and then you just separate that by semicolons. So in the case of the table, in Word, you don't need to define the table. It'll just go in order. So if I had 3 tables, I'd go table underscore 1, table underscore 2, table underscore 3, and it would just read them in as it finds them, so to speak. And you can see that here, that we just put that in our description for us to remember when we're configuring, table 2 for the second, table 4 for the fourth, table 10 if there's 10 tables. And on the left-hand side, you just have to make sure you have a field that can handle or process that table. So if we close this and I go into what Mark built here the other day, and we take a look at it, then I have my field name, which he was referring to in the Word document. And it's just a special data table. And if we go into the section builder, it's not even filled out. So the key thing here when you're parsing this kind of information is just having the right field type. and then the parser it says, oh, that's a basic data table. I know how to display that information here on the screen. And that's really, that's all that's really to it. If we look at this one here, we have MS goal. That's the field name. We're still able to use a caption. You can even put permissions on it. In this case, in our sample, we didn't want anyone modifying the data once it was in the system, so we applied a deny role access to the field, but it does not prevent the parser from populating it in the first place. So that's really, just wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive in there and kind of show you maybe more of the mechanics behind the parser. If we look at the Excel parser, we'll see similar functions here as well. We open this up. Now in this case, it's it's just strung out in one line, but it doesn't matter how you lay it out here. It's doing the same thing. So it's left-hand side. What are we calling it in SmartSimple? Right-hand side. What's the name of the fields that you want to bring in the Microsoft document, whether it's Excel or Word. So we kept a consistent format on how to do the mappings, as well as even on the export side with the MS Word doc. So I just wanted to take a few moments there, and I know with the webinar, there's a lot of topics, and provide today an opportunity to kind of go a little bit behind the scenes on how this was set up, and then when we get to the question period here, I can answer any questions you have. One thing too is when you're doing things like this with the HTML and putting a reference to the template they can download, then it's really just we're making use of the instruction box, which is quite handy. But we've stored the file in a Smart folder. So that's one thing you'll just need to be aware of. If you want to provide a template for people to download, you can go into your Smart folders, and you can see here we have Excel parser, putting in we threw in the document one in there as well. And when you are looking at your file, so you would have just uploaded this here to the folder, you can grab that URL if you weren't aware by the drop down here, and you can use this as a reference in your HTML to the file. Now, when you're grabbing any kind of file from the system, you do not need to put this part. So the system knows you're in your instance of the system. So you just need to reference from after the .com or .us or .ca or whatever URL you're in. You can just put /files and reference that. And that is the best practice in the case that maybe you change the alias or something changes with the domain, it'll still work. If you hard code this part, and let's say we changed our alias to Upgrade 1, it would break all of our links. So the system knows what system you're in. There's no need to repeat this part of the URL when you're doing that. So just wanted to go through that part and give you a little bit more background on the parser. So in addition, or the next thing I'd like to mention is just the password. There's nothing too crazy about the password, but I just wanted to be very clear that we did make changes to this page that will have an impact to your end users. So if you don't do anything, it's going to be the same. But if you come to this page and you click Save, we've now mandated that the default minimum password length is 8. Okay, so if you come here, even if you don't change any of the settings and you click Save, the next time somebody changes their password, they will need to put a minimum password length of 8. If you've done any messaging on your system saying, hey, passwords must be 6 characters or whatever, that will change. We used to have a minimum of 6, but to be a bit more compliant, in the modern time, we've set the minimum password length to 8 to sort of have a stronger passwords. So just be aware of that. In terms of complexity, I think Mark touched on this the other day. You can choose from the default, and you can use these toggles to decide how strong you want the password to be. So that's a little bit new as well. 2 or 3 of those. If you do custom, then you can define your own custom policy. But in this terms, is probably most of you are using this pattern here. And you can always test your complexity here by typing something in. If I type in the word welcome, it's going to say, hey, you're not meeting any of the, except for the one lowercase letter, you're not meeting any of the criteria. So that's a nice way to check that. Again, just to reiterate these things, no common passwords, things like welcome, it'll prevent that for people using them. And again, just to reinforce that these settings, you can actually pick, restrict people from picking things like a city name that's on my organization's profile, or my organization's name, for example, or even on my personal settings, maybe I can't use my first name. I can't put Eric in my password. It says, no, that's not allowed. So again, really, all I really wanted to mention, or why I decided to pick this as a topic for today, is I just wanted to be especially clear on the new minimum password length. And if you have any instructions, or people are messaging you saying, hey, I'm trying to change my password, it worked last time. In this case, it has, if you do come here and click save, it will enforce a minimum of 8. So let's talk a little bit about percentages complete and the long form. So let's pop into this guy here for a second. So in what we've done here in just a sample system is I've enabled the sort of what we're calling a long form. So, and I know this has been shown already, but I think this is pretty cool feature, and it addresses a bigger problem in the system when you have many tabs. So I know a lot of cases you may have a lengthy application form. Maybe you have 10 tabs going across the tab bar from left to right, and it may be confusing for people to use or navigate between the two. So by enabling this functionality, it's really nice. I can jump right to the bottom, even on a long scrolling page. It takes me to the sections. I can bounce around, go up and down, and it's a nice way to navigate. Even if you're on a tablet or something like that, it's much easier to jump up and down between sections using this format. So it really was intended, again, just to give you some more background on it, you'd probably, if you only had a few tabs, then it's probably not worth it. But if you have like an example, like a long application form, this may be a good approach to take for your end users. It's a bit more intuitive, and it does provide an easy way to bookmark or bounce between different sections if I need to get someplace from the top of the screen to the back, and it does save me a lot of scrolling. So it's a good way to kind of think of it like a table of contents almost, and you can jump between sections of the application form. And really here, there's just a few things going on. When this is enabled, it's looking at the title bars, and that's it. So it's not introducing any new field types or anything like that. It just says, oh, wherever I find a field of the title bar type, I'm going to use that as my bookmark, and it'll automatically take that and put it on the right-hand side as one of the jump to sections. So you can organize or structure your page just with inserting title bars. As easy as that, and then it takes effect. And the settings for these are in the long form format. So that's really that's all there is to it for those. In terms of using the title bars for the long list. Actually, sorry, I did not show you how to do that. That's in the global settings, and if we go under, I believe it's the branding, and it's this setting here. So if you have global settings, you go to branding, and you can enable title bar navigation pane. So that's what that's called here. Okay. And it's a decision you have to make, sort of, are we going to use this format or not? I do think it's useful in certain use cases. Like I said, if you have long forms, it could be easier for the person to navigate back and forth. Now, the other part of that is the percentage complete. So like in this case here. So this is handy as well. And it works quite well with the, it works in conjunctions with the tab bars. So just to show you behind the scenes, these are the tabs, right? So it's not the title bar, it's the tab section. And this allows you to, or the system, once it's enabled, again, you don't have to do anything extra. It just inserts them there. And it's really, all it's doing at the end of the day is taking a look at the fields, how many fields I have. And, you know, if there's 10 fields and I've filled in only 9 of them, then I'm going to get 90%, right? So, you know, in this case, it's looking at what I filled in here, how many fields there are. You can see I removed the contents of that field and the percentage changed. So there's no, it's not some magic calculation going on in the background. It's basically if I have 10 fields and I want to fill 10 in, then I'm at 100%. You do, however, have the opportunity to set different weightings. Maybe if this tab is a bit more important, you can set different weightings to the sections. So this will, you know, how much is this tab contributing to the overall, you know, maybe I got 2 tabs and I put 2 in here, then it's going to have more weight than the first tab. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility in determining maybe what a few tabs are more important than others. You can assign more weighting to those tabs. And then once that's enabled, you'll also get the total complete at the top. So while I have individual tabs here with the percentage complete, they'll roll up and to give you a total for the whole section. Now you don't need to use the tabs with this. You can always just enable the total completion and it'll just look at all the questions if you have a single long form. But for the tabs, it's going to also give you a breakout by the different sections. And again, the use case for this was really from an applicant's perspective. If I have a long application form like this, you know, it's like, oh, when am I going to, you know, when is this done? I can say, oh, okay, I'm almost finished. I'm almost filled everything in. I'm 77% complete. And it just gives you a nice visual of saying, you know, is everything filled in or not? Maybe even from the review side, if you open up an application form that's been submitted, you can kind of do a quick check. Yep, is it 100%? Great. You know, I know at least they've kind of filled everything in. The nice thing about this is there's some configuration options for it. Here in the settings page, where you can define in the section that is forces the level 1, in this case we're calling it grant, and there's a form completion indicator permissions, and this allows you to define who sees the percentage complete, because maybe you only want the applicants to see that. Maybe internal staff, you don't need to see it every day. You kind of, you know, you get a feel for it, but you can define the roles, types, and statuses that it can be applicable at. So, and you can even mix and match. So maybe I'll say, well, for, you know, an organization contact, maybe they only see it on in-kind grant types only when it's in draft, right? So you can, you have control over how those percentage complete indicators operate. So these are really the kind of the 3, other than the password, the 3 things I wanted to talk about today were really on providing a better end user experience. So, you know, giving an indication of percentage complete for the user, being able to jump up and down on a page if you want to use like a long scrolling format, if you have a long application forms, and also the word parser, which allows you to use, again, an outside source or a common tool that people are familiar with, like a Word document, to get data into the system. So maybe I'll pause at this point and we can take some questions, maybe Sarah?
Great, that was awesome. On the word parser, can we have character word limits? Does the system validate character limits in different ways than previously?
So it'll operate the same way. So if so the question is, can we support character word limits? You can. So if you think about the word parser as just the input form. So it's no different than if I came to the field and I started typing myself. You know, it'll just put the words in. If any of the, you know, if I make it mandatory, if I put minimum, maximum word counts, it'll still validate those, but it'll validate it at the time where it normally validates. So either at submission or on save. So it's not going to prevent the word parser from inputting the data, even if I've gone too long. Maybe I want 10 words and I put 15. It'll allow the word parser to put the words there, but when I try and save it or try and submit it, then the error checker will say, wait a second, this field says only, that many words or characters.
Great. Do date fields have to comply with the year, month, date format?
I believe so. It's gonna, you're gonna, whatever format you're using, you should put it in the year, month, day, so that the system can understand that. But you can set that in the word field. I don't know if I made that clear, but if we go here and we use the, if I look at the properties of the date, then you can set the format here, and it actually defaults to that. But you can define the properties, and then if you lock it or control it, then the people can't change it inadvertently. So you can kind of force them to put it into that year, month, day format.
Great. Additionally, can this be done in Google Docs and saved as a doc file?
As long as it's a DOCX, I think is the new word format. As long as it's in that format, then that's fine. So if you start in Google Docs and save it as, I believe you can save as from the Google into that word extension, the DOCX, then it's fine.
Great. For word parser, will the tables defined in the document always be mapped to basic data table fields, or can the system create advanced data tables too?
No, it won't create an advanced data table at this stage. However, maybe, so in this example, it'll automatically create a basic data table for you. However, it does, and I didn't want to get into today because it's a way more complex, so maybe we'll do a separate session just for that. But you can actually, just like in the Excel, you can actually use the parser to create level 2s. And I didn't show that here. I was being sneaky, but good question. In this case here, you can use this format, and this is the format that you may have seen if anyone is using the Excel parser. You can use this format to actually create records. So in addition to populating fields that are on, let's say, the level 1 in our example, if you format, this is a JSON structure. If you use this format, then you can take the values in the table or in the table in Word, and it'll actually create level 2s. And the Excel parser does the same thing. Once it's a level 2, then you can actually create an advanced data table that is mapped to level 2s, so that when you open the advanced data table, it's actually pulling from those level 2 records. Then only that works in the XML that are dynamic, so where you can add rows, not on the fixed tables. But in this case, if you're using an advanced data table that's mapped to level 2s, you can definitely take this approach and have the word parser create the level 2s, and then when you open your advanced data table, those records will be there. So if you have any more questions on that, maybe reach out to us at the businesssolutions@smartsimple.com, and we can talk you through how maybe you want to set something like this up in your system.
Awesome. Another user asked, can we use this parser document template that users can complete outside of SmartSimple? And then are they able to upload it to an L2 activity and bring the fields into that L2 level 2 form?
Yeah, exactly. Yep, for sure. So you can use it as a any of the levels, level 1, level 2. And again, but if you're going to do that last thing I said, where it creates level 2, you can only do it at the level 1 or level 2, because level 1 is going to create level 2s, and level 2 is going to create level 3s. In the example I was just talking about with the advanced data tables. But our example here, you don't have to provide, this is just for convenience, so we don't have to go look for it. But you could send this Word document around outside SmartSimple. It doesn't have to be in the system. Maybe you put it on your website or something. They email it to you, and you can upload it. And then you upload the file, and it's going to do the same thing. But it will work at the level 1 or level 2.
For the parser, would we need a separate template for each like English and French budgets? Or can somebody upload like the French template into the English XML?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you could, as long as it's all about the field names. So when you're like in your Word here, you know, it's about this, right? So it depends on what you're populating. So you can only map one field to one field. So if you had two fields, you know, you could have a French form, you know, that's all, you know, that's in French or any language, you know, Spanish, anything like that. But you can map it all back to the same fields. So if the budget, you know, it should all be feeding into the same field, even though the presentation of the language, even in SmartSimple, is in a different language, it should be fine. So you can either have, yeah, a French budget or an English budget. As long as you map the fields accordingly, it doesn't matter. And you can have two different, as many templates as you want. You know, maybe you have 3 versions of this. Maybe I've just gone through and I've done the translations. As long as you do your field mapping properly, it doesn't matter. You can have as many versions of the templates as possible. I think if I understood your question right, hopefully.
If we enable the title bar navigation pane, is it global or by each UTA or module?
This one's global. If you're talking about the jumping, then it's going to use that as a navigation for the system. So it is a choice of, do we want to enable that kind of style? And then when you do use, you can see it's enabled here on our demo system. And I have a few title bars here, and it is enabled on it by default. So it's either on or off. You can't, at this stage anyway, you can't say only here or only there, like you can with the percentage complete.
Great. Can the completion indicator be used on level 2 records as well?
Yep. And it would be the same way. If we go here and I go here, you'll see the completion indicators as well. So just whichever tab, right? So this is level 1s, this is level 2s, and here's my completion indicator. And even if I go to level 3s, I have the indicator there. And again, it's just setting up based on role, the type of level 2, level 3, level 1, and at what status that you want to see it at.
Great. For the word parser, once the Word doc has been uploaded and the fields are filled in, can you then edit the data directly in the fields?
Sure. In our case here, we've locked it down just because didn't want people changing it. But yeah, once it's in the system, then again, you can use permissions just like any field and do it accordingly. So you could make it editable if you wanted to, and then you can modify it if you want. Yeah, we're thinking of the parser as it's really just a alternative entry form. So it's not doing any of the, you know, the Word document is living outside the system, and if there's any rules or formatting or anything in that system, in the Word doc, that's just in Word. And then when you import it, it's really just bringing in the raw data. And then once it's in SmartSimple, then you can do whatever you want with it, whether you want to lock it down for permissioning or you want to, you know, enforce, you know, character length, like the previous question. Once it's in SmartSimple, then it's yours to do with whatever you want. But it's just as a think of it as really just an alternative to, you know, someone logging in, filling out the fields manually. You're using Word as your sort of entry mechanism.
Can the completion indicator generate a message, something like a pop-up or text, prompting to hit submit button, just say for example?
No, not at this stage, but that's not a bad idea. Maybe if we add additional features to it, yeah, maybe. Thanks for the suggestion.
For the parser, after import, does the history show the update and who, like the user who updated it?
It will show the, yeah, if track changes are, yes, because it's the same, again, once it's here, once you click the upload button, we don't have it enabled on the field. But if you had track changes enabled, then it would say, yeah, it was Eric who uploaded the file. Yeah, if I had track changes on, then it'll show, who last uploaded the file and, what the history of that was. Yeah, there. So it was uploaded before I turned it on, but as long as you have that on, then you can see who last uploaded the document. And you don't have to, like, in some cases, we can delete. It's saying here you can delete the previously uploaded template, but you can just, if you upload a new one, and if you enable versioning or something, you can kind of see it'll just upload the last file that comes in. So you could see a historical, I guess, record of the documents that were attached if you wanted to do that as well.
For the parser, if the user leaves a field blank, will the field be cleared if it previously had data, or will it remain unchanged?
No, it'll be whatever comes from the Word document. So if it's empty, it'll push empty into the field. So
I think that's all the questions we currently have. So like Eric said, if people do have any further questions, please feel free to email us at businesssolutions@smartsimple.com, because we're happy to go into anything we discussed today in further depth. We will be sending a recording of the webinar out within a week. And thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good day.
Have a great day.